what are often typical board sizes at various stages of companies. This is a frequently negotiated topic when it comes to term sheets for venture and seed financings, and it's also a topic of much consideration. Some perspective on this from my end, having worked on I think over 500 to 600 venture capital deals over the course of my career, is that these days the magic number seems to be about 5 directors for the vast majority of companies, from seed to probably Series B, so through the Series A. I would say the vast majority of companies are opting for a 5-person board. There's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, there are more players than ever in the seed and venture capital space, meaning that when I first started doing venture capital deals, there might be just a handful of early stage investors on the cap table. By the time a company raises Series A, it's not uncommon to have anywhere from 20 to 40 angel investors, angel funds, venture funds that are doing early stage stuff, high net worth individuals, the founders. Your cap table nowadays just seems to be bigger than it was in the earlier days of venture capital and when I first started doing things in the venture capital realm. And 5 people on a board generally leads to what's called a 2-2-1 corporate governance framework. And that would be 2 common representatives or directors elected by the common stock, 2 directors elected by the investors, so the Series Seed investors usually, and then 1 mutual or independent. And I would say, anecdotally, companies with a 5-person board seem to have gotten a little bit further and been able to attract a Series A, have probably outperformed, in my experience, companies that started with a 3-person board or even a solo director for very long. I want to go through my own data and validate that, but that's my general impression. And this could be for a lot of reasons. Number one, there's an accountability mechanism built in when a founder has a board, and there's multiple viewpoints that can offer a perspective on a particular matter. Most companies, until the very end and even after the exit, don't always have everything figured out. And so a company's ability to get people who are focused on what maximizing shareholder value, which is what a board's job is, in a board-like setting that keeps the founding team and the management team kind of accountable to themselves and accountable to the shareholders, seems to produce some pretty good results. On the other hand, I've seen a lot of 3-person boards kind of devolve into maybe some personal disagreement or bickering, and because there's no extra perspective than the few people that are on the board, it might seem a little bit more personal than it really is. I think that's also kind of a comment about maybe certain founders and stages of companies where sometimes even though a company or founder has raised significant amounts of outside capital, they still view the company as essentially being synonymous with themselves, which is just not the case. Doesn't mean that the founder is not the key person or a critically important thing, but at the point where a company raises money and changes and adopts a board structure, the board is the governing body. It is no longer a single individual, nor should it be. That's how our entire system is designed and the game is played. So, these are some things that we often see. I rarely see 7-person boards, even after a very large Series A. I think most institutional investors think a 7-person board is just too unwieldy. I oftentimes see the larger boards, 7-person boards, sort of being stacked in favor of one group or another, and it's almost like it's there to kind of create an echo chamber rather than to be a consensus norming mechanism where different viewpoints are assimilated into a better result. I think sometimes larger boards, especially 7-person boards, can be maybe 5 people who are sort of founders or founder-like and a couple investors, and even though the investors have legal rights, it's almost like the board's purpose is simply there to say, well, this is the majority view, and that's just simply not a good way to run a company. We'll do more about boards that are trending toward becoming an echo chamber and other videos, and we'll talk about some of the things that can be done to eliminate that. But I would say 7-person boards do get more common closer to exit. So, I would say after a company's doing probably 30 to 50 million in revenue, I see more often 7-person boards. They often have a lot of professionals that are independent from the company, meaning outside. They're not employed by, they're not significant investors in the company. And I think that those kinds of situations are a little bit different, where you're bringing in more professional type board people who have been on many boards, not one or two, not even one or two public companies, but multiple boards, and have seen, good and bad things on the total ramp up. I don't think a 7-person board filled with people that have no or little to no board experience, except maybe one or two or even a handful of boards, is going to be very productive. And I think that's what I've noticed in all the capacities I've had, whether as a lawyer, investor, CEO, or other participant. So those are some things to think about boards. I would say the vast majority in the data that we collect suggests a 5-person board, even at late seed to A is the norm. I do not think it's generally 3 people at this point in the market. But there's exceptions to every rule, and there might be a good reason to keep it small. And I think you got to look at the particular board dynamics in any particular situation and how the company's performing with what it has. In the end, corporate governance is a means to an end, which is maximizing shareholder value and keeping folks accountable. So if the board is, achieving that purpose, the size isn't necessarily the key thing. The dynamic is always the most important thing. But in terms of size and what most people do, I think it would be pretty well established at this point that, at least in deals that we work on, 5 people tends to be the max, with a 2-2-1 structure, 2 common directors, 2 preferred, 1 common or mutual or independent, selected by the 2 other groups. All right, you have any questions, reach out. Don't forget to like our video. If you really love it, please subscribe. We love the fact that you're taking a look at this and hope it helped. Again, this isn't legal advice, just there to help you as you build your big company of the future, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.